All right, y'all. Today we are going to continue graphing polynomials, but we are going to graph from standard form today. So go ahead and get your notes title in your notebook, graphing polynomials from standard form, and then get down this example. We are going to do this problem. Graph f of x equals x to the fourth plus 2x cubed minus 4x squared minus 8. And I think it would benefit you if you want, you can set up your notebook like this, put the steps on the left. We're going to go through all of these steps as we graph our polynomial from standard form. So go ahead and kind of set up your notebooks, set up your notes, get the example down, get the beginning steps down, and then we'll begin. Okay. So we are going to start with the end behavior, and there's two things that you need to know in behavior: the leading coefficient and the degree. So the first thing I'm going to do is write degree, and in leading coefficient, LC. The degree is going to be your highest exponent. So the degree is 4. It's the highest exponent when we're not in factored form. So we are not in factored form here, we're in standard form. So it's our highest exponent. We don't have to add the exponent when we're in standard form. And then the leading coefficient is the number that is in front of the exponent, or the x with the highest exponent. And that is just a 1 in this case. So because there's nothing there, there's no number here, the leading coefficient is positive 1. Okay, and then for degree, we care about even or odd. That's on the left over here in our notes. And for leading coefficient, we care about positive or negative. So in this case, our degree is even. It's even because it can be divided by 2. So this is an even number. 4 is an even number, so I'm going to go ahead and write even. And the leading coefficient in this case is positive because it's positive 1. So positive. Okay, the leading coefficient tells us about our right side. So I'm going to go ahead and write right side down. Or sorry, right side up. Sorry. Positive means right side up. And then the degree tells us about the left side. Left side. And even means same direction. So same direction. Same direction as the right side. Odd means opposite. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is draw our kind of like what our end's going to look like. So I'm going to do that over here in the middle. We don't know what's going on, but that's what we're going to like figure out at the end, and we'll graph the whole thing. But we know that our right side is going up, and we know that our left side is going the same direction, so also up. Okay, cool. Now that we know what our ends look like, we can jump to the next step, which is to find the y-intercept. Find the y-intercept. Anytime you're trying to find a y-intercept, you should plug in x equals 0. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We are going to find f of 0. F of 0 equals, and we're just going to plug in 0 for all of our x's. So we have 0 to the fourth plus 2 times 0 cubed minus 4 times 0 squared minus 8 times 0. Okay, and then if we do this math, we have 0 to the fourth, that's 0. This is 2 times 0, that's 0. Minus 4 times 0, that's minus 0. Because 0 squared is 0, 0 cubed is 0. Minus 8 times 0, that's 0. So what do we get? F of 0 equals 0. So I'm going to write that over here. F of 0, actually I'll do it down here. Sorry. F of 0 equals 0. And then we need to write a point. Remember, the y-intercept is a point. So we need to write this as a point. So let's go ahead and do that. Our y-intercept is this point. We plugged in 0 for x, comma, 0 for y. And if you're wondering where those numbers came from, we plugged in 0 for x. That's where this 0 came from. And then what we got was 0 for y. Right here. That's what where this 0 came from. Okay, so we know our graph is going to hit the y-axis at the point 0, 0. That's where it's going to cross the y-axis. And if you weren't sure what the y-intercept was, make sure you make a note. It's going to cross the y-axis at 0, 0. That's what the y-intercept means. Okay, so now next step, we are going to factor. To find our roots. So we're on step 3, factor the find the roots, x-intercepts. And so I'm going to write our equation down just like what we started with. That's this equation up here. So we have f of x equals x to the 4th plus 2x cubed minus 4x squared minus 8x. And now we're going to factor that equation. So here we go. Factor to find the roots. We have 4 terms, 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what type of factoring should we try? We know we need to try factor by grouping, but first always factor out a GCF if you have one. So do we have a GCF? Is there something in common in all these terms? Yes, they all have x, 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 x. Okay, so we're going to factor out an x. That's going to be the first thing we factor out. And then once we do that, what do we have left? We have x cubed plus 2x squared. We're just taking 1x away from all of these pieces, or dividing all these pieces by 1x, minus 8. All right, that's what we have left. This x is going to come down with every step that we do from now on, and it's going to stay out in front. So let's leave that x in front. And now, what's our next step in factoring? Well, because we have 4 pieces, we are going to do factor by grouping. So our first step is to group. Put parentheses around the first 2 terms, put parentheses around the second 2 terms, and now we are going to take out a GCF. So hold on, this bracket is going to come down. I'm just bringing that down. And now we're going to take out a GCF in the first group. So the GCF in the first group is going to be, let me do that in green. We have x squared. Out of these two, we have x squared in common, so x squared. And then what's left? X plus 2, right? And then bring down your minus sign. Bring this down, minus. All right, so now we're going to leave a space right here, and then copy our x plus 2 factor. So we're going to copy this x plus 2, bring down that bracket. Okay, and then what needs to go in that space? Well, we can take out a GCF on this group, 4x minus 8, or we could think about what needs to multiply right here to get us back to 4, like if we multiply it in, to get us back to 4x, what we started with. So the answer to that, the GCF in that group, is 4. Sweet. Now we will bring our pink x down again. So we're going to continue to bring this down. We have x, and we need to now combine our green terms, combine the ones on the outside. So I'm double underlining in their own set of parentheses. So we have x squared minus 4, and then bring down only one of the x plus 2's. Only bring down one of these. So x plus 2. Okay, now that we have these 3 factors, we need to check, can we factor any more? And usually you're checking, can you use difference of squares to factor one of these? So can we use difference of squares? Yes, we can. We can use difference of squares to factor this piece. The square root, we could take the square root of 4. There's a difference right here in the middle. That means subtraction. Difference means subtraction. So we are going to use difference of squares. Bring down your pink x. Use difference of squares on the x squared minus 4, and you get x minus 2, because 2 is the square root of 4, x plus 2, and then bring down our x plus 2 factor. Okay, so now that we have factored f of x, we can now see our x-intercepts. So what is x equal for each factor? That will be our x-intercepts where we cross the x-axis. X equals 0. For this guy, x equals 2. X equals negative 2. And then for this one, x equals negative 2 again. We need to write this, though, in a different form. So really quick, how many x plus 2's do we see? We see 2x plus 2's. So we can write this as x plus 2 squared because there's 2 of them. So really quick, I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewrite this because we're about to graph, and because x plus 2 is squared, that's going to change the cross or bounce situation at that factor. So hold on. We're going to write these two as x plus 2 squared. So we have x plus 2 squared. And those ones turn into yellow, they turn into this one factor with a square on it. Does that make sense? Because there's 2 of them. They're multiplying. Okay, so we still have our same zeros. X equals 0 for the pink, x equals 2 for the green, and then x equals -2. Cool. And we are almost ready to graph now. We just need to figure out cross or bounce. Figure out cross or bounce on each factor. And remember, you look to the exponent, the degree, or the exponent on each factor and check, is it even or is it odd? Odd means cross, even means bounce. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to look at the degree or the exponent on each factor. So what's the exponent on this factor? Well, there's no exponent that I see, so that means the exponent is 1. So let's go ahead and put a 1 there. What about the x minus 2 factor? Do we see an exponent on that? No, so the exponent is 1 again. And then we do see an exponent on the x plus 2 factor. The exponent is 2. Okay, so at x equals 0, our exponent is 1, which is odd. So at x equals 0, we're going to cross. At x equals 2, I'm looking here, the exponent that we see on the factor that came with x equals 2 is even. Or sorry, odd. It's also 1. My bad. Odd. That means it cannot be divided by 2. Odd means your number can't be divided by 2. 1 cannot be divided by 2 evenly. So we're going to cross again at x equals 2. And then at x equals -2, for that root, the exponent here is 2, which is even. So at x equals 2, we're going to bounce. So that we figured out our cross or bounce. So now we can go ahead and go to step 5, which is to graph. So let's go ahead and draw our graph now. We're going to graph this. The first thing that we need to put on our graph is our zeros, our roots, our solutions. That's what we just found. So our biggest one is 2. X equals 2 is our biggest solution, and -2 is our smallest one. So I'm going to make my graph go to 2 and -2. So 1, 2. X equals -2. X equals 2. Cool. And then we need to make sure we get all of our zeros on there. So our first one was x equals 0. That's right here. That's also our y-intercept, y'all. So label that as your y-intercept. That's your y-intercept. And it happens at 0, 0, right? We found that earlier. The y-intercept should happen at the point 0, 0, and it does. All right, our next 0 was at x equals 2. So we're going to go ahead and put that 0 on there. And then our last 0 was at x equals -2. So let's go ahead and put that 0 on there. Sweet. Now let's put so we put our roots, check. Now let's put our y-intercept. We put our y-intercept, check. Now let's put our end behavior. So if we go back up in our notes, we said that both ends are going to be pointing up. And we did that up here. Both ends are pointing up. So let's go ahead and get those ends on our graph. You're going to go to the far right x-intercept and point that end up, and go to the far left x-intercept, point that end up. And the last thing we need to figure out or do on our graph is cross or bounce. I'm going to start on the far left. I'm going to start with this purple point. And are we crossing or bouncing on the purple root? We found that over here. We are bouncing. So that means I'm going to hit the x-axis on my graph. I'm going to hit the x-axis and then bounce off, just like that. And then at the other 2 points, at the pink root right here and at the green root on the far right, we are crossing on both of those. We found that here. So we're just going to go through the x-axis. So you're going to go cross through and then cross through. And then we're done. That is the graph. All right, that's notes. Now let's get some practice.